Welcome to the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228sports.com. Now let's get in the game with your host, Bruce Thornton.
And welcome back to the Southern Six Sports Podcast, episode 3 of season 3. We are Jamboree Week for high school football, and we are on location as Coach Bruce Thornton, your host, and we are in downtown Picayune, Mississippi at Paw Paw's Camper City, and appreciate them hosting us today and being a part of the 228 family as they sponsor the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228 Sports. And as I was dealing with this, I was like, well, if I'm going to be in Picayune, I'm going to be in the middle of Pearl River County, then what best subject to talk about than Picayune, Poplarville, Pearl River Central football, and the guys that cover it better than anybody else that I know of in this area. That's the Talkin Ball crew, Talkin Ball Y'all crew. And so that's going to be my guest tonight. I got Ricky Whitaker and Clay Sweet, got Jason Baker, Caden Smith, everybody going to be here. We're going to spend some time talking about those guys. And first off, thank y'all so much for joining us.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys put something together last week, and I reached out to Ricky. I've talked to you guys on a couple of occasions. Usually it's the week of the George County Picayune game, and I get to talk about how bad Picayune's going to beat George County the last couple of years, unfortunately. But we're going to try to change that this year. We'll talk about that a little bit. But you guys did something last week where you kind of introduced your audience and the area to the coaches, and I want to start with you, Ricky, and just kind of go around the table here. The Talkin Ball Y'all kind of football preview last week went really well.
Yeah, it's always a good time for us, Bruce. Anytime we get the coaches out and kind of hear from them, and of course we love talking about Picayune football and having Coach Stogner, but it's kind of special too to have Heritage Christian Academy, which is another one of the area schools. They're in their inaugural season for varsity football, so talking to their coach and having them on was also pretty special as well.
Yeah, and when you look at it, you also had some Pearl River Central football as well, Pearl River Community College football as well, so you really kind of had it covered.
We did, Bruce. Got to talk some Poplarville Hornets, and then Pearl River Community College is, of course, right across Highway 11 in Poplarville, and they're anticipating some changes up there, and in a good way. They flipped their roster over, and high expectations for Seth Smith's ball club.
No doubt. And, Caden, for you guys, it's introducing a new coach or an old coach coming back with Coach Feaster coming back to lead the Blue Devils.
Yeah, it's always exciting when you're bringing in the new coach, like you said, bringing him back to the area, getting to sit down with John and introduce him to the fans, to what we're doing, how we're representing, out there. And it's great for the city of Poplarville as well to put something on like that. I mean, that was a big deal. There was a lot going on. It was pretty impressive.
And I saw that, and you guys had put it out on social media and everything, and I knew I was coming over here at some point and wanted to get over here to Paw Paw's Camper City here in Picayune, and so I reached out to Ricky, and I was like, look, you're going to have the gang all together, so can you just mention this to somebody? And because I didn't want to make 15 different phone calls. And again, I appreciate you getting this together, Ricky, and you guys being a part of it with us, because 228 Sports is just it's a piece of the puzzle that Talkin Ball Y'all is a piece of as well, covering high school sports. You guys focus on, obviously, this area with Picayune, Poplarville, Pearl River Central. And, my focus when I step away from the 228 is George County and Rebel football. And I started to wear my Rebel shirt over here today, and I was like, nah, I'm going to stay neutral. I'm just going to put on a T-shirt. But it's an opportunity where some people are going to say, well, why are you having them on? I'm not in competition. I want you to go listen to what they do every week, and then I want you to come listen to what we do every week. And then when you're covering on Friday nights, man, I want you to just find a football game and listen. And you guys give people an option over here. We give people an option in Lucedale. There are other broadcast teams across the coast. We're going to try to introduce you to some more of them. But that's kind of my mindset of this thing is, hey, we're all trying to pull in the same direction, and that's to present high school sports, Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we had the Olympics to kind of get us through some of the off-season stuff, but I think we're at the time of year, Bruce, where we're just starving for football, and I know the three of us guys that are here, we all love it. Hey, we'll tune in and listen to anyone who's talking about high school football, and I know on behalf of these two guys beside me and Clay Sweet as well, I mean, it's really about getting exposure to the kids. We enjoy that. We don't do this for a a price. It's just something we do for the love of it, and to sit and talk football is always a good thing.
And there's nothing like on a Friday night driving home somewhere and being able to tune in. Maybe you got through a little early, or
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it on some nights where maybe there was a weather delay, especially early in the year. That's
Right.
always one of y'all is going to deal with lightning, or one of us is going to have to deal with lightning one of these Friday nights. And we're there at 11 o'clock still doing the first half of a ball game, and finding that on the way home from some of these long road trips. And it's just special on Friday night to be able to tune in, whether it's through the internet with you guys or on a radio station, whatever it might be, Jason.
Yeah, it really is. There's nothing like it, especially in South Mississippi where football matters, and definitely here in Pearl River County. Obviously, it matters. You've seen certainly 2 of the 3 programs have a lot of success of late, and we believe John Feaster will have some success at Pearl River Central as well. So, you're never enemies, right? You may be, cross teams, but at the end of the day, we all have a commonality, and that's the sports that we're covering and the love of broadcasting. And there's no sense in treating each other that way. We could just take the high road, treat each other with the utmost respect and hospitality, and do our best jobs of covering each of our respective schools. And I think we at Talkin Ball Y'all have really prided ourselves in that. And I think if you've come to Picayune and received some of that hospitality, I know you've received them, Bruce, last season, I believe, back over in Loosedale. And that's what makes this cool, the relationships and the friendships that kind of form throughout the years, and the joy that brings in both of us covering whatever respective program we're covering at that time.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a little unique because there are 3 schools here that probably aren't separated by 10 miles or whatever, but they're all going in different directions at some point, because we've got 2 6A schools, but not in the same district, Caden, because you guys get y'all drew the lucky straw last year. Thank you, by the way, because it's usually George County that gets that. And then you in 6A, and then you got Poplarville in 4A. But Caden, it does make it unique because you guys can root for each other, because even if you play early in the year, it's still a non-district game, and you can go on from there and say, hey, I hope y'all win the rest of them. Maybe, and for Picayune and Pearl River, it's like, hey, maybe we'll see each other down the road come November.
Yeah, that's it. It's all about the county. I mean, when you're out there playing, you want your area to win, and you want your team to win. But when you step back and look at the whole thing, the county's never been against each other. We're all from here, grew up here, and it's Friday night football every Friday night.
Doubt.
So,
it's happened a couple of times at the state championship. Both Poplarville and Picayune were there simultaneously. And you talk about county pride and pulling for each other. Both of those fan bases have sort of engaged each other in those special moments. Certainly, I think it's happened twice in Hattiesburg, where both fan bases were up there at the same time.
Yeah, and state championships returning to Hattiesburg this year in December. That was announced last week, I think, by the Mississippi High School Activity Association. So, it'd be nice to put couple of local teams back in the state championship. And, Jason, that does kind of lead me into my big take on high school football. And I mentioned this a couple times on WRB we did with Justin and I when we were talking about it. This area, to me, starting with the highest classification, 7A, down through 4A, really, because once you get below 4A, not too many schools involved in smaller classifications. There are a few, 3A, Stanislaus, St. Patrick, some of them. But I think it's time to put some coast flavor on this state championship. And you guys from Picayune and Poplarville, I was telling Ricky, y'all kind of carried the banner when you talk about that and what you were mentioning. But it's time for some other schools to start making runs, particularly in the larger classifications.
Yeah, we've carried the Buffalo Bills banner, right? 0 for 4 in state championships.
Hey, I can't say anything. I made it 3 years in a row, and I was like, I know how Marv Levy feels now when I did the interview after the third one. I'm like this, and it was in softball many years ago. But yeah,
it's been Heartbreak City for the Hornets, right? But there's something special about playing into December, and it has been this county that's sort of carried that banner. I mean, Picayune has just had a plethora of success. When they've gotten there, they've made noise, and they've capitalized. And Poplarville keeps banging on that door, and they've run into a few brick walls, literally possibly named Jaheim Otis, one of those walls. But other than that, they've had the success of getting there. They're ready to kind of put their stamp on this county label of state championship football and do that victoriously. And who knows, maybe the Hornets can do that in 2024.
Yeah, but when when we talk about 228 sports in the area that we cover, the southern 6 coastal counties, y'all been it. I mean, really, when you look back at it, and I think it's time. To me, that's the biggest question. Every team has some questions, and we can talk about that as we go through. Picayune rebuild, a lot of loss, a very talented senior class that's gone. Pearl River, new head coach looking to build something in Pearl River. And then with Poplarville, just trying to kind of build off continued success, very similar to what Picayune. But when you start talking about it overall, to me, for the coast, it's okay. Can we get to play in the second and third week in November? Can we put some more teams play in the week of Thanksgiving? Can we certainly put some teams in Hattiesburg? Because that to me, I mean, I know you can have successful years and there are different goals for different teams, but ultimately, everybody thinks this week that they got a state championship team or somebody that's going to be their best year, and it's time to deliver on some of that.
Yeah, no, I would agree, Bruce. And, you look at some of the talent we've had on the 7A level on the coast schools that are struggling to get out of the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a meat grinder of teams up in North Mississippi that have been dominant for a long time. And, to your point, it would be nice to see some of those schools represented too. But, boy, it's just it's a tough, different kind of animal of football up there.
It is.
And let's say what it is, too. Some of it's draw. Some of it's luck of the draw. I look at Poplarville a year ago. Macomb was a really, really talented team that got upset in the third round that sort of opened that path to allow Columbia and Poplarville to square back off again, once again for a South State championship, and it allowed Poplarville to go see Lawrence County. Sometimes it's just truly about the draw in the road that you get in these playoffs.
And, Jason, I agree with that, particularly once you get to 4A and below. Now, 5A, 6A, 7A, I think it's almost a given, because my argument with that is in 7A, okay, I'm gonna put Gulfport and Ocean Springs in 2 playoff spots. Anybody disagree with that?
No,
7A coast.
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
So there's 2 spots. And then that's going to leave the other 2 spots open, and that can be for debate, Biloxi, D'Iberville, whoever you want to pick out of that. Okay, to the north, I'm going to go ahead and put Brandon and Oak Grove in 2 spots.
Yep.
In 3, in Region 3, 7A. So now you're only left with, arguing, is it going to be Meridian? Is it going to be Petal? It's going to be somebody good. Is it going to be Pearl or whoever? So you kind of you get into a pattern. I've already seen this with the 7A. And in 6A, I'm going to go ahead and say that Picayune, George County, and Pascagoula will probably make the playoffs. I'm not sure what order, and I think Hancock, West Harrison right there, Ricky, if you agree with in Region 3 where Pearl River is going to be. I'm going to go ahead and put West Jones and Hattiesburg in.
Absolutely.
And then I'm going to say everybody else is battling for the other 2 spots.
Yep.
And so you kind of get that feel, and then even going down to 5A, to me, Laurel, Wayne County, Goshen, I'm going to say they're probably going to take up 3 of the 4 spots, in Region 4, 5A. And then, but with you guys, you do get some different paths because you get into division breakdowns, with the odd number of teams. And, I just feel like, if you're going to finish 3 or 4 in 6A, you're probably going to wind up in So-So or Hattiesburg this year.
No, I would agree with that. And I think, too, a lot of it, you talk about just Picayune and Poplarville, I'll use it for an example. A lot of it, too, is knowing what your system is and sticking with it. And, Jay Beach, he knows what his offense is. You know what you're going to get from Coach Steiner and Picayune, and they don't back down from that. Yeah. You do have a lot of schools at times that decide, we got to do something different, and maybe it doesn't match their scheme, but you try to make the adjustments, and it doesn't always work out. But I think that's a big part of it is knowing who you are and staying with that.
And I think there is a common factor and a continuity about the programs that we're talking about that are consistently there, and what Picayune, Poplar, and then for Pearl River, that's what you hope happens with Coach Feaster is, put your system in, let's build it, let's start it, even down to the 7th grade, because I know Picayune does this as good as anybody. By the time they get to be a freshman and sophomore, they know the terminology, they know the play sheet, they know everything that they've done because they've been doing it. And there are a lot of places that aren't like that. If you have multiple middle schools, or you have middle schools that maybe say, well, you get some young coaches in there like, well, I'm going to run my system. I want to be a head coach. No, just build the program. And if you can be patient with it, and Lord knows, guys, we don't live in a very patient society today, the payoff will come. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take for Coach Feaster, but I know if you give him time, he's going to figure out a way in Pearl River Central. And these guys at Picayune and Poplarville, that's what they've done.
Yeah, that's one thing we used to always say was Picayune's a prime example. If you can set a culture and find your identity, Poplarville's doing it now too. If you can run 3 to 5 plays really, really well, you don't have to run too much else, and that's what PRC is going to be trying to find their identity, which they've lacked for a long time. And that's one thing I think Feaster's going to bring is stability. And he runs his football, and it stays that way. He had it in Stone County and was very successful.
I was going to say, that's a great example of it. Take away the 1 year at Moss Point, but what he was able to do at Stone was remarkable. Yeah,
and I think it's I think you have a lot of the same style of athletes at Pearl River Central. You don't always have, like you say, call it what it is. You don't always have D1 guys walking through those hallways, but the kids have always worked hard. Yeah. And they've got a couple of guys that can really play ball, some pretty good athletes, and they're looking to harness with those guys and get those guys to buy in, Yeah.
Ricky and I were teammates of John Feaster's in high school at Picayune, Bruce. And, I think it was our class, mainly Ricky's class, kind of set the precedence. The tone gets set in middle school, what you want to do. Yep. And really and truly, unless that buys in, it's going to be difficult because you're going to have some middle school coaches that think they want to run air raid, and then you're going to have this high school coach. And, Dodd Lee did a great job of saying, this is who we're going to be, and this is who we're going to be no matter what. And he didn't back up from that. And, I think it taught us the appreciation of, hey, this is who we are. We're going to be who we are, and we're going to excel at what we do. And I think that's really what's happened at Poplarville is the buy-in from the middle school level. And that's from administrators on down, frankly, really kind of step in and say, yeah, we're going to embrace exactly who we are, which is tough, physical discipline. And then we're going to be really good at a few things instead of trying to be so-so in a bunch of things. And I think both of those programs, and I think Jay Beach would be the first to admit, he's learned a lot from watching how Dodd Lee ran Picayune for so long and then transitioned it off into Cody, and Cody doing the same thing. Cody's not veered much off of what Dodd did for so long. Maybe he's kind of implemented maybe a little more throwing attack than what Picayune had when, say, Ricky and I played for Dodd Lee. But at the same token, they've embraced physicality, toughness, discipline, not going to beat themselves, and they plan on just beating you in the fourth quarter. And that's really what Poplarville has embraced and learned, and frankly, it's brought a lot of success. I think Jay Beach has won over 78% of his games since he's been the head coach at Poplarville, and it all starts down in the middle school level of that culture.
Yeah. And Bruce, to add to that too, you talked about patience, and everyone wants to win right now, but a couple of schools even in our district, you look at it like a Long Beach school who Coach Chambers, he's only in his third year, and you could say the same thing about Coach Patrick and West Harrison. They've had to come in and get kids bought in. Right. Then they've got to try to build on that. And then what you saw from Coach Chambers' first year and his second year, and the same thing with Coach Patrick, they were in games last year. So now you got to know how to win in tough games. So it's a slow process. But I tell you, man, Ronnie Brown at Long Beach and the Stapleton kid at West Harrison, that may be two of the more underrated running backs in our division this year that nobody's talking about. And those guys won't be a cakewalk either. Got a lot of talent coming back. So, it's going to be interesting in our division for sure. Yeah, and when you look at a Long Beach, I agree. I mean, it's a small step. It's we ended this losing streak. We won a game. I mean, and you've got to develop that. You're exactly right. I mean, from a coaching perspective, I've always believed that I want to continue a team that wins ball games, because I want you to know how to win. I want you to know how to close out games. I want you to know how to come back in games if necessary. And if you never experience that, or you don't it's that process. And Pearl River Central with Coach Feaster, that's the first step is put together a schedule that puts you guys in positions to win some games early. Yeah. And if they could do that, then the kids will buy in, and then all of a sudden you're late in the year in October and you're in a district game and you're like, okay, it's the fourth quarter, and you look up, oh, we're ahead by 4, or we're within 1 score. Let's go get this, just like we did 3 weeks ago when we played whoever early in the season. Yeah, it's neat to see the 2012, 2013. I'm fortunate. I played for our coaching staff was John Feaster, Seth Hayden. We had Quincy Patrick, Seth Smith, Jay Beach. Playing with all these guys, and it's always been the same thing. Yeah. They do that. They're able to get guys to come into a locker room to buy in, because you have to be excited to even go play football. No doubt. It's not easy. It's 100 degrees outside, and it's hard when you don't have your identity. You're going on the field every day. You're not sure what's going to happen, so that's the biggest thing, is getting the kids to buy in and bringing excitement. I mean,
John Feaster was our defensive coordinator. He'd walk in and bench 500 pounds before the game, slam it down on the iron, and you're like, oh, my goodness. So it's all about just bringing some attitude and just some swag with you when you go to play ball.
And I've said this about Picayune for many, many, many years, as long as I can remember going back to Dodley and all that. I'm like, to me, Picayune could walk up to the line and say, we're going to run the ball right here. Y'all can't stop us. And then on second down, we're going to come back and we're going to run it right here again. And then it's going to be third and short, or we're going to have a first down. And guess what? We're going to run it right there again, and then we'll move the chains. And I'm like, that's what I felt like playing Picayune. I always thought that when that's one of the more physical weeks of your season, and you have to – I'm always weary of who we play after Picayune, because I think physically they beat you up. Now, if I go out and go 4 and 5 wide and chase you around all over the place, yeah, I might be tired, but I'm not beat up. But I'm getting beat up. I'm getting beat up playing West Harrison because they play in a phone booth.
Yeah.
I mean, East Central, they play. There are teams that have kind of picked up off of what the power football game, and you watch the game and you're like, I can put blinders on my face, and everybody's within the hash marks. I'm like, there's the whole game right there, and it's a very physical style of game, and when you're successful at it, you just wear teams out, because by the late in the third, early in the fourth quarter, like, I don't want to do this anymore.
It becomes very demoralizing when you can't stop a run. Like you said, throwing the ball around is different. I know my senior year at Picayune, we were kind of proud of ourselves, and Baker remember this. A lot of schools didn't run the ball on us. They would throw it on us, but they didn't run the ball on us. And there were a couple of schools that year. Stanislaus was one of them that it was a single back set, and they were running a stretch, and they were running it down our throats. Yeah. I'm like, man, this is terrible. It's a really tough draw when you're getting the ball ran on your defense and you can't get off the field.
Yeah, I mean, the most successful 10-year stretch that we had was Al Jones, power, and and it was a lot of from Coach Triplett and Picayune background. He was an offensive lineman, and he was an offensive line coach before he became head coach, and that was it. I mean, we would wear you down, and we still. And teams still do that. They just do it out of spread, and it's just not quite the same effect, I guess. I think of a West Jones. West Jones runs a spread, but they spread you out to run the football.
Yeah.
And you guys are very familiar with that because you've seen them, whether it's in district or in the playoffs. And, it's just a different style. It can be successful, obviously, but it's still a different style.
Yeah.
It just takes a different mentality.
Sure.
It really does. And kids that have come through this program in this area, they're not interested in the fancy stuff. They're not interested in spreading out. Maybe their daddies are, but the players that are within the programs, I know for all of us, I think we all would say there was something fun about embracing that culture of saying, hey, man, we embrace a tight end and a wing, and yeah, we'll tell you exactly where we're coming and how we're going to do it, but that doesn't mean you're going to stop it.
Exactly.
And I think within the kids of this county, they've sort of embraced that, and it takes that kind of mentality, because there's certainly have been players here that have, I wish we would spread out and get in the spread, but to be honest, I just think it doesn't fit the culture of the county to say, hey, let's go get in these spreads and try to embrace, a new era of football, if you will. Instead, what's worked for this county is, no, man, we're going to put our hands in the dirt and we're going to make you do it. And then, frankly, we feel we can do it better than you can. And certainly when you're tired, we know we can do it better than you can.
And I think in that respect, for all three of these schools being community schools, very similar to George County, even though we're the only one in the county, it's still a community-type deal. These kids grow up watching that. They're on the sideline. They're sitting in the stands. They're the ball boys. They're all of this, and they grow up with that mindset of, okay, I want to be that guy. I want to be the next running back at Picayune or Poplarville. I want to be the next quarterback for. And that's not the case everywhere, but it's still, I think, prevalent here. And when you start building and being successful, then it really becomes that. That's when you really get those kids in there. And so, looking, from that standpoint, I think it's a model for success that around here obviously works really well.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's take a break. I've tried to figure out. I don't want to make any of these guys mad. So I guess the best way to do this, because the reason I say this, guys, is I only got 4 mics and we got 5 guys that want to talk here because Clay is here. So I want to talk. I'm gonna hurt Jason's feelings here for a second. We're gonna focus on Pearl River and Picayune and kind of 6A overall, because I'm a 6A guy too. So I can pour mouth George County here for a few minutes, and let Ricky and Clay tell me, how they're going to fall this year. And they're really not. And then I want to get Caden's take on what Pearl River continues to do as they play in a really tough district and the travel that is involved and all that. So we'll be back. Southern Six Sports Podcast brought to you by 228 Sports. We're on location. We're in downtown Picayune, Paul's Camper City. We'll be right back.
Hey, all of you South Mississippi sports fans, are you ready for some high school prep sports this fall? Get in the game with the new 228 Sports app. Live scores, breaking news, players of the week, and so much more. Now available for iPhone and Android devices. Download the first dedicated high school sports app for South Mississippi today. Only from 228sports.com.
Ready to score big with the best sports coverage on the Mississippi Gulf Coast? Then lock your radio on WPMO. We're like the cool uncle who knows a little too much about sports, the one who gives play-by-plays at every family barbecue. From local high school games to the SEC and even the Atlanta Braves, tune your radio into 1580 or WPMOradio.com. Dave Ramsey is also back weekdays from 2 till 4 p.m., and you'll find the local and national news every weekday morning. WPMO, the talk of South Mississippi.
And welcome back to the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228 Sports. I'm your host, Bruce Thornton. We are live on location here recording this week's episode, Paul's Camper City in Picayune, Mississippi. And we're talking Picayune, Poplarville, Pearl River football. What else would we be talking about over here? But we're going to focus on 6A. We ran Jason off the mic, and Clay stepped in here to talk a little bit about 6A, Picayune, George County, Pearl River Central. Unfortunately, them guys, they drew the short straw on this time, and from George County, we drew it plenty of years. So Caden has his crew on the road in Region 3. They get to deal with the Hattiesburgs and the West Jones and all of that. But guys, when you talk about 6A, I see a lot of early season rankings and things, and I still see, we talked a little bit about it in the first segment, I see all the same beast, same names, West Jones, Picayune, Hattiesburg, all in the South, and you know, is it still a situation where South State, you got to navigate some tough waters with some really good football teams?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Bruce, and it is going to be a lot of the same names that you see every year. And I think, too, what the run that Picayune's had, I mean, you look at the last 3 years, when your worst finish is a South State title berth game, that says a lot, and it really says a lot about what Coach Stogner and his coaching staff has done. Because, listen, it's been a team loaded with talent, but it's tough to coach talent like that sometimes because you may have a kid – at a spot where if he was at another school, he would be on the cover of the program, but he's got to play a backup role. So you got to navigate through those things, and it makes it tough. And it's also tough, and Clay knows about this too, when you've got a bullseye on you every single week, you're going to get everyone's best football. So I think the job that he and his staff has done, because look, we're going to talk about our schools, but really across Mississippi and across the country, there's going to be high school teams starting the season off loaded with talent. This is their year, and they come up short. It's hard. It's hard to win. It's hard to win in the playoffs. It's hard to go deep in the postseason. And, Picayune's enjoyed that. And I know Coach Stogner appreciates that as well.
Yeah, and when you go right up the road. All right, Caden, once and for all, how do I pronounce Carrier? Did I get it right?
Carrier.
Just
Pretty
career,
good.
like career, like
Yeah.
Career.
That's close enough. We've heard it pronounced every way possible. We know what you're saying.
Every time I'm doing a game, and we've done baseball down here because we met in the playoffs for the last 3 years, and I'm like, is it Carrier? Is it career? What is it called? I just know it's a tough place to play. That's all I know. But for you guys, we talked about the bullseye, obviously, on Picayune and the success they've had the last 3 years. PRC, much different. Looking to build new head coach, different district, different region, whatever, but a very tough region because, oh, by the way, y'all got the team that won state last year in y'all's region.
Yeah.
Now, we got the one that finished second in South State and could have went up there and won if they had won that game probably. But y'all got the ones that's wearing the crown now. And from everything I understand, they're still going to be pretty good.
Yeah, West Jones that's an incredible program. I mean, that's just going up there and playing. It's like a college atmosphere. There's fog. There's a jumbotron. There's all kinds of things. But
it's a really hard place to play. That big old Mustang sitting on top of the press box.
It's something serious.
And they don't have any room in the press box, by the way.
No,
the last time we were there,
in
we
the
were on the
stands
bleachers on
calling
the
it.
other
Yes, sir.
And it was raining. That's how we had to do it. how we wrote there.
But Pearl River Central, it's going to be a lot of identity, finding out who you are. I mean, it's been 15, 16. You know, we don't have the luck Picayune and Poplarville, the hard work those guys have put in. We've worked hard. We haven't got there, though. It's been a long time since we've been to the playoffs alone. You know, it's been a very long time. And these kids, you know, you mentioned it earlier, the schools are – Picayune to PRC is exactly 8 miles. You know, to Poplarville is not much further, not much at all. So you grow up seeing your friends and right in town, and they're doing phenomenal. And then the guys a little further down the road are just as good. And everybody's from the same area. They go to the same churches. They hang out at the same spots. You know, so it becomes demoralizing, and especially
and for the last couple of years for Pearl River Central, like, y'all just wait till baseball. We'll get y'all on baseball.
Yeah, that's our go-to right now. Yeah, we've been very, very blessed with baseball. Yeah.
But you know, when you look at it, so when you look at this schedule, and we're going to talk about Picayunes in just a second, because it's just this is what happens when you beat everybody for 3 or 4, 5, 10 years in a row. Nobody wants to play you early in the year. And you got to go get all these big dogs to play. But for Pearl River, you know, a South Pike, a South Jones, a Pass Christian, and then I think, you know, then a rivalry game with Poplarville, and then Bay, and then you jump in district. So there is some opportunities there with that schedule to not only build that culture, but do it in a way that you are successful, and winning will make that culture grow even faster.
Yeah, that's actually one of the we were in a couple of games last year. I mean, trying to find out who we are. We never ran the same offense twice last year. You know, we'd be running something that was working, and coaches would decide they need to try something different. So we tried something different, you know, and we were in a lot of those ball games last year, especially early on, you know, the non-district games. We were going into halftime tied, or, you know, we had a couple of games where we put up 300 yards of offense, and we were there. We had the ability to do it. We didn't know what we were. We didn't know what we could do. You know, there was a lot of work to be done still. There's been a lot of time. I stay well in touch with the coaches up there, and I know there's a lot of time going into that offensive line right now, because there's points where it was just, you know, these big guys you'd line up against. You line up against some massive ball players in South Mississippi. I mean, Bay St. Louis had a guy that went to
Stanford?
Yeah, he went to Stanford. I mean, you're playing guys like
6'5",
that.
350 or whatever he was, or whatever he is. He ain't got any smaller.
No.
But when you look at that, you know, obviously, and then you look at the region, a little bit different, because you guys only have 5 teams because Jim Hill's still an independent. So I look at this schedule, I'm like, okay, at Forest Hill, October 11th, okay. Go win that game, and all of a sudden you're probably in the postseason.
And you've got an opportunity. Yeah, there's definitely winnable opportunities. You just have to seize the opportunity.
And you get in, and you know, I mean, then that's the step in the right direction.
Right, I think.
You know, because after that it gets really hard. Terry, then Hattiesburg, West Jones to close it out. But with the division only having 5 teams, you take care of Forest Hill, and then you're in pretty good shape there, you know, going into the other 3. And that's, again, it's going to take small steps if the people in Pearl River career will be patient. But that's, you know, you win a couple of these games early, get some confidence heading into that first game, and who knows, you may be talking about postseason for the Blue Devils.
That's the best thing about the crowd, man, just to speak for the people of the county. I mean, it's been roughly 10 years since much success at all, and that Kenneth L. Hendricks is full every Friday night, and we still travel 100+ people every time we travel. Even we went to Terry and had their visitor side packed out. I never thought we were going to get back home, you know, coming back from Terry. So
there's no easy way to get to Terry. I know it's on an interstate, but there's no easy way to get to Terry.
But the kids have always been well supported. The community supports them well. You know, even Picayune's fans, and they support PRC when they see them out. And the same thing with Poplarville. You know, it stays a family atmosphere when it comes to Friday night ball.
And that's in that stadium. Last time we were there, it's been a couple of years. We did a game over there, and we were there, and I was like, if this place really got rocking, I mean, this. And I can remember many years ago coming over when we were in this district. I don't even remember because I'm old, but anyway, you know. That field is just different because everybody is right on top of you. So if you're in the middle of a wild, crazy game, you know, the end zone with the grills and the area down there, and you know, it kind of circles you on 3 sides. And I'm like, if this place ever gets going and they're in the ball game, it's a true home field advantage.
I can tell you personally, in the 2012, 2013, we had back-to-back South State visits. and I played at that time, and we had a game against Picayune where that little stadium had 10,000 people in it. I mean, shoulder to shoulder, standing up around the.
Right.
It's a monster, and it's loud, and you can't hear what your coach is saying, and you got to wear armbands to call plays.
Yeah.
I mean, when it really gets rocking, when PRC's really rolling and being successful and able to compete with these other teams in the county, it is a different atmosphere.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not a big fan of coming over here and playing softball. Coach LaBella and I go way back, and we've played them in the postseason and stuff. And it's just one of those places. Whatever sport you're playing, it's just a tough place to play. When they're good, it makes it that obviously it's that much more difficult. But even when they're just okay, they're still tough at home. And so.
Yeah.
So I like the schedule. I think obviously you get some success early. A South Pike, a South Jones, those are games that I feel like right off the bat you're going to be in those games.
We had those games 100%, and then we just let them slip away. You have to play for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
And that's something they're working on. Is we were talking about mentality and being able to keep up in the heat and those things and conditioning, and those games were prime examples. We had both of those games last year. At one point, we were tied what, and then at one point we were in the lead in one of them, and it just slipped away. But within the division, I see 2 for sure potential. We can compete and we can keep up with those teams immediately, and we just have to get the job done. You have to execute. You have to everything you've been coached, you've been taught, and and that's another thing for these athletes. These poor kids have had 3 different coaches now. Every year their high school career has been a different guy, and Coach Webb was great, and he brought some success coming from him, but he came in so late. He didn't get a chance to establish his offense. He didn't get to look at his athletes and the things he had, because it's not Pearl River County is not one of those schools where you can come in and you have athlete going D1, and you just kind of run what you want to run. It's just not, because 8 miles the other way and 10 the other, they've got those guys. So, you have to really come in and assess what you have and see what you can run. It's not one of those, we're just going to come in and run this.
Sure.
You have to assess what you have.
And like I said, then while you guys go into the Pass Christian Poplarville, y'all, man, you're going to give a great scouting report to Poplarville, because you got half of their district and non-district games with Pass and Bay and then Poplarville in the middle. So you can have your own mini 4A division race right there. But I say that with the schedule, because when I flip the page and I pull up the Picayune Maroon Tide schedule, y'all couldn't find any small schools. I see 7A, 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 7A. I mean, 7A. I mean, that's it. Yeah. So when y'all get to Pascagoula, y'all couldn't find somebody besides Brandon to open up with?
Well, we tried last year and had Catholic come to Picayune, which was a really cool scene for all the history that Catholic has over in Baton Rouge. To get them over this way was really neat, and really turned out to be a special ball game.
No doubt.
On the wrong end of it, video review showed otherwise.
There's some controversy to that.
Yeah,
for sure.
so that was a really neat ball game to start the year. This one's got all the makings too. You go on the road last year, you beat Brandon. Brandon had all the preseason pub like they have this year, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. That Brandon team's going to be really, really good. Just looking at them and seeing some of what they did this past spring, knowing what they had coming back. And so it'll be a fun affair at Lee Triplet.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I could see every one of these teams being a playoff team. I've already said it. Let's go ahead and put 3 of them in. Brandon, with all the hype, they're going to get in. I think Gulfport, Ocean Springs, we've already said that. I think they're the 2 best teams in Region 4, 7A. And then D'Iberville is going to be one of those teams that competes, to me, for the other 2 spots in Region 4. And then Petal will be competing, I think, outside of maybe, after Brandon Oak Grove, I think you throw Petal in there with Meridian and Northwest Rankin and those schools that'll be competing there. But that's by the time you guys get to Pascagoula, you're going to have a pretty good idea of how good this team's going to be, Ricky.
Yeah, I think so, Bruce. And, it's really not just us, but it's every high school football team, college, NFL. It's about staying healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only a couple players away from your season turning the wrong direction. So staying healthy, I think, through that, staying together as a team is going to be important.
Well, Caden, he says that, and brought their third-string tailback into the game against us last year and ran for 180 yards and scored like 6 touchdowns or something. So if they get hurt, they do pull a few guys.
He's the kid who would have been on the cover.
Starting, he's like the starting
Yeah.
defensive back. Just come run tailback for us.
Corner,
25
safety,
carries,
kicks,
180, 4 touchdowns. But it is. I'm just giving them a hard time here because, like I said, they handled us pretty good last year from that standpoint.
You do bring up an interesting point, though, Bruce, is the fan base for Picayune, have they gotten spoiled to see?
Oh, I'm sure.
And so me and Rick, I'm 44 years old. We've been here for a long time. That was a special cycle of kids.
No doubt.
From what you described there for Nike Ratcliffe to go over and do what he did, and, of course, he's over. We're so proud of him. He's over at Dartmouth. What an opportunity for him to go further his education. Actually, he's Coach Feaster's nephew, so that's a really cool tie there. But all that being said, is there's not a Nike in that fourth string in this bunch. I mean, I know that this group will have high expectations. A lot will be thought of this group, but it's different. I mean, you cycle that kind of talent out, it's just going to be different. It's going to be a different-looking Picayune Maroon Tide team. I don't think the expectations have changed, but a situation like you described, that will be a different deal if you're down to that kind of situation. It will look different.
And I think as we sit here and talk, it's unique that these two schools, at how far did y'all say apart, 5-6 miles, something like that, and you guys are at a point where, you're saying, this group that left last year, special group by far, there were records say it, this group coming in, but that's when the culture kicks in of what they expect. And that's what you guys at Pearl River want to get to. You're in the beginning stages of trying to build that. Picayune's at a point where, this is going to test that culture. Yep. This is going to test that that mentality of we're still just going to be good. Because you're fixing to find out with this early schedule, what happens if you're 3-2 coming out of this schedule or 2-3 or something? Because there's a lot of really good football teams on here. There, you're going to have to be ready to go right out the chute.
Yep.
But that's when, like I said, the mindset kicks in. Well, we're going to find a way to win these games more than we lose or something.
That's
and
actually
history
what you bring.
History tells me y'all probably will.
Well, and that's what's good too. To your point is, you got kids that were sophomores and juniors that are now seniors on this team that they're like, we know how we got to take care of our body. We know how we prepare for a big opponent. We know when we travel, and we've been exposed to those things. So it definitely does help to have been there before, because I think before you can come through anything, you've got to know what it's like to be there, and that is going to help a lot. But just like Clay said, it will spoil a fan base pretty quickly because you run through that gauntlet of a non-district schedule, and depending on how we come out on the other end, people's gonna be like, "Whoa, what's going on here?"
Right.
So we just got to hang in there.
Yeah, and you think about your season last year, South State ending in so-so, and we've talked about how that's a special place. I mean, to play, it's tough for a road team, but it's still a special Friday night high school place to play. And you're in that season, and then you're sitting there this year, and it's tough at the end. You're like, this ain't as bad as it was at West Jones last year. We're okay. Let's see. There's things you can play off of. Whereas at Pearl River right now, they got to build those moments. They got to have that memory.
We have years
like you
of work
talked
to
about.
put in.
You got to remind those kids that, hey, remember we played South Jones last year? We had them beat. We were ahead of them going, let's finish the deal this year. Those are the kind of things, and I think that's where these programs are. And then you get through this gauntlet of 7A teams, and then you open up with Pascagoula at home, and that's a big game. I mean, that's a playoff implication seeding game right off the bat, because I do think they're one of the top 3 teams. I put Picayune, Pascagoula, and George County at the top. If I got to rank, I'm just going to rank them. I'm not trying to make anybody mad, give anybody bulletin board material. They were the top 3 teams last year, and I think they've all got enough talent coming back where they deserve to be right there right now if they stay healthy and everything stays the same. So that's a big game right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean,
and so because I think you guys going into Pascagoula, I think it was like pouring down rain last year for the first 20 minutes of the game, and Pascagoula gets off to like the worst start they could have possibly done. I think they have a snap go. Bill Glenn still blames it, on the weather or whatever. But they're pointing towards that game. I mean, we talked to Bill a couple of weeks ago and Coach Sims, and that's they're kind of directing everything they're doing towards that game. But you got to feel good. They got to come over here.
Yeah, it is good to have them back at home. But, you said it. I mean, Pascagoula and Coach Sims, he's just a class act. Got a lot of talent coming back. We know with George County the talent they have coming back. And Deuce Knight, one of those guys, you may coach 35, 40 years and never encounter a kid like Deuce Knight. He's a generational type talent. And then, Hancock's always going to be in the mix. And the schools that we talked about already that are right on the fringe there building their programs, West Harrison and I've already mentioned Stapleton and how good he is, and Ronnie Brown and what Coach Chambers has done at Long Beach. There's a lot of people that now have a group of kids that have been there, right? Yep. They've you look at Long Beach last year, they had Pascagoula on the ropes.
Yes,
West Harrison had Hancock on the ropes. I mean, those are two schools you can't go to sleep on, so the district's going to be tough.
And we lost in overtime to West Harrison. They're a team that if you're in a game, you can't get the ball enough because the way they run the football and the misdirection and things, you got to trust your linebackers better be really disciplined to play West Harrison. But the way they run the ball, they try to just keep it away from you, and you get frustrated, especially George County sometimes. That was the weirdest game a couple years ago in overtime. They scored like 35 in the first half, and we held them to like one touchdown in the second half, and then we missed an extra point in overtime. And then Long Beach, I think, is that team that's dangerous. Just like if they can get off to win a couple of games early like they did last year, I think they'll get some confidence. And then Hancock, I think Hancock was that team last year that got off to that great start. We went down there, built up a huge lead, and just kind of held on and beat them down there last year, early in the district schedule, but. I think they look at it from the fact of, hey, we're not in 7A, because for so many years it was them in Gulfport and Ocean Springs and D'Iberville and they're kind of like we are in a lot of cases. All of us are. We feel like we're all competing in the same level playing field as far as the numbers go. You're going to get a taste of that. You're going to play Brandon. You look over there and they're like, there's 100 kids over there. Sure. And that's the one reason why they went to 7A. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. It's what we did, but for our schools, it's really it makes us feel like we're a little bit more on an even playing field with the numbers, and those things. But I do see that. And then the West Harrison. Then you go West Harrison, Long Beach, and then you end up with George County and at Hancock. So. Last 2 weeks, that's interesting because the week we play, I think Pascagoula may have Hancock those last 2 weeks, and then we play Pascagoula on that Thursday night, or y'all playing Hancock to finish up the season. So I could see a scenario where the last 2 weeks are really big in our district for seeding and home field advantage and different things like that. Me and Bill have said it for 2 years. The last Thursday night when we played Pascagoula is going to decide something. And last year it was the 2 or 3 seed home field, and I don't see it being any different. And for us, the week before that is just as big because it's you guys and we have to come over here.
Yeah, that's the way the schedule flips. I think Cody and the staff are pleased to have both Pascagoula, sure. You already mentioned. You mentioned the George County and yourself coming this way. That's a break in the scheduling for Picayune. There's no doubt about it, potentially, to have those. And then we've already talked about PRC's district. And so that 3-4, you definitely want to avoid the 4. You don't want to be going to Sosa early in the playoffs. And so the big pivotal matchup, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of even teams out here. I think it's going to be a great year of high school football. We can't wait to cover it. We appreciate what you do, and congratulations. You mentioned baseball, what a run that was for that state title, and so congratulations.
I think we're
on
sitting
that.
here talking to what I said was any of the 3 teams that survived out of this group right here would have probably won that thing. And George County got hot and really turned it around with you guys. I had lost the first game of that series and got a win, and then came over here and played really well. I think 10-run you guys on that Saturday.
That's
and
right.
it really kind of jump started them towards moving through the playoffs. And but I thought. Like I said, Picayune, Pearl River, George County, and it's going to be the same next year. When we get to the spring.
Going back to Soso, I still see that light show in my sleep, Clay. I've seen about enough of that light show to last me a long time.
You want to avoid that trip as long as you can.
And they were so young, and their offensive backfield, they've got everybody that produced a yard coming back. Their defense is going to look different. But their offense is going to be leaps and bounds better. There's no way around that.
Well, and at the time, we're scouting them from our perspective. I think they had one defensive lineman that was Division I commit, and we're like, which one is it? Because they all look exactly the same.
Yeah.
And you know, and one thing I noticed just watching from the start of the season, from really volleyball and football all the way to baseball, and obviously I pay a lot of attention with fast pitch softball. In 6A and even in 7A, you kind of just have those teams that, okay, when we get to this season, you're going to have to beat them, you know. And when you get to this, like I know baseball, Pearl River Central out of that region, they're going to battle West Jones. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. I know it don't start till February, but baseball and softball, they're going to battle, you know. And you get to basketball, and you're like, and for basketball in our district, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, you had Pascagoula last year, and you had Picayune coming off a state championship appearance. Then in the girls' side, you had Hancock, who like run the, you know, goes 30-1 or whatever. Loses to Neshoba, and you kind of just know going in that's, you know, and when I look at this schedule for our district for Region 4, I'm like, we got to come over here and win. I mean, you know, we've got a test with Pascagoula, with Hattiesburg early, I think, which is a good indication of what to expect out of, you know, maybe deeper in the playoffs. We go up there to Patrick Stadium and play them about the 5th or 6th. I think it's the last non-district game of the season. But I know that, you know, that when we get to that stretch at the end, we better have taken care of business, because what for George County, what we don't want to do is we don't want to have to do something going into the last 2 weeks. We don't, you know, other than, hey, we have to win the last 2 to win the district. That's great, because that's a very real possibility. But you don't want to have to sweep them to make the playoffs or something like that. Sure. You know, and I think Pearl River's the same way. Y'all take care of business early, because you don't want to have to beat a West Jones and a Hattiesburg to do something.
Yeah,
you want to take care of Forest Hill and put yourself in a position to do that. So
Rick and I listened to your call of Hattiesburg, George County last year. I guess Deuce had just gotten back. And so how much, Bruce, do you think him being home, I'll say, and having all of these extra reps will pay dividends this year opposed to last year?
I really think it's going to make a big difference. You know, that standpoint of you know, leaving like he did under those circumstances, and I don't get into all that.
Sure.
His family made a decision. You know, and Deuce is a great kid. I mean, you talk to him, and he handles himself. But having that full repetition and having those guys around him, we've got a lot of guys coming back around him.
Sure.
But it's one of those things where sometimes I want to just ask Coach Ray, said, just go 5 wide, run 5 verticals down the field, take those 5 guys down as far down the field as you can, and then let Deuce take his chances on who's left, you know, and get him in the open field,
everybody.
you know, because he's so long, and
Ooh.
you know, he never looks like he's running full speed. But then the guy's got an angle on him and he doesn't catch him. You know, he's a special guy.
Yeah,
you know?
he's beautiful.
And you got to add Lucedale in there too. I mean, that's a tough place to go play football.
Gilmartin is a special place. It really is, especially, you know, in George County, and that's what I like. I like about Pearl River and Poplarville and Picayune, and there are a few communities. We go to Wayne County, that place will be packed out. They're going to support their people.
Yep.
You know, East Central, that's always a big rivalry. Obviously, Greene County for us. So there's still places, because when I look on this schedule and I see some of these bigger schools, and I'm like, you guys will have more people there than they will.
Yeah, it's just a different feel to it.
There is
more
a
to
different
do.
feel to it. You know, when Gulfport comes in, Gulfport may have a great team, but you know, their stands will be half full. You know, it's just a different community feel with Picayune, with Pearl River, with George County, you know, Hurley, East Central, Greene County, places like that. So, man, looking forward to it.
Can't
I know
wait.
I want to talk a little 4A with Jason here in just a second, but guys, I wish y'all the best of luck. Pearl River all year long, Picayune all year long except for 1 week. You know, I will wish the best for you except for November 1st. And then, but Pearl River, I think Coach Feaster will do you guys right, and I hope the fan base will just let him build his program, and I think and I don't worry about Picayune. They can pour mouth all they want to, Katie. They're going to be fine. You know, none of us are going to feel real sorry for them. They have been on a great run, and Clay, Ricky, I know you guys will look forward to it. So. But y'all welcome to hang around a little bit. I want to talk to Jason and focus on some Poplarville, but please hang around. And if you wish y'all the best of luck.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks for having us,
Thank
Bruce.
you for having us.
All right, when we get back, we're going to talk a little Poplarville Hornets football here on the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228 Sports from Pawpaw's Camper City right here in Picayune, Mississippi. We'll be right back.
Hey, all of you South Mississippi sports fans. Are you ready for some high school prep sports this fall? Get in the game with the new 228 Sports app. Live scores, breaking news, players of the week, and so much more. Now available for iPhone and Android devices. Download the first dedicated high school sports app for South Mississippi today. Only from 228sports.com.
And welcome back to episode 3 of the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228 Sports. I'm your host, Bruce Thornton. We are talking football in Pearl River County. We've been talking Picayune, Pearl River Central, and now we're going to talk a little Poplarville as we're in. Is this downtown Picayune? Are we downtown?
Close, yeah,
Paw
close.
Paw's Camper City here, and I wish we had. We're not quite ready to do the video stuff just yet, but if you want to come down here and buy a camper, man, I've heard about Paw Paw's Camper City. I don't know as long as I can remember. They do a great job of sponsoring local teams and sports.
Involved.
They are so involved in the community down here.
Yeah, and always have been 55 years plus. I think they've been open
No
selling.
wonder they as old as I am.
Selling
No wonder I've
cars
heard
and
about
campers.
this for all
That's-
of.
yeah, absolutely.
That's a good camper, Paw Paw.
That
That's
sure
what
is.
I remember. And the thing, I remember some of the commercials and watching the kids that were a part of that grow up because they've gotten older. Because, like I said, I'm 56, so they've been doing it as long as I've been watching TV, and I've been watching sports since I can remember. So, but they are greatly involved in the community here in Picayune, and appreciate them hosting us. So, Jace, we've been talking, a little 6A, and let's go down to 4A and the Poplarville Hornets. What do you see about this year? Are we just going to continue to build what Jay Beach has done? I mean, is he just got this thing in a I'm not going to say in cruise control because it's a different group of kids every year, different things or whatever. But the culture, we've been talking so much about culture with what Pearl River's been trying to build, what Picayune has done. And I think I put Poplarville right there in that concept.
Yeah, I think it's a year where they're going to return a lot of experience, Bruce. 8 starters on offense, 9 on defense, off a team that was literally one play away from playing for a state championship. Dropped that loss against Columbia in the South State Championship Series. And, they're very young at their most important position in terms of their workhorse at running back, which is Tylan Keys. He's a young man with 20-some-odd Division I offers at this point. He's just a sophomore, so that all came as a freshman a year ago. He did not play until district play. So Ty will return and will be the bell cow. He'll be the workhorse. He's going to be the guy they're going to hang their hats on. And so certainly to see his jump and transition, he could be their best corner. They won't allow that to happen. He'll be their featured tailback in that single wing system now that they run. And, that's what's going to make them unique. A lot of experience at the other positions, but then some youth, in the tailback position. And he's arguably maybe is as good as anyone that's toted that football, and that's saying something for the Poplarville Hornets.
Do you think that last year's team, because you mentioned the youth, and we talked a little bit about that last year, were they a year ahead of schedule?
Maybe.
Or maybe. And that's so tough when you say they're a year ahead of schedule. Where'd they get? They got to South State.
Yeah.
But, when you talk about so much, it's hard to predict. I mean, in football, even more so than probably any other sport, when you're looking about a young team. Because I take George County for an example. 2 years ago, Coach Ray, we talked, man, we're starting 15 sophomores. We're so young, and it showed. We struggled. Last year, we got all of a sudden there 15 juniors, 18 juniors, and finished second in the region, and now we're 15, 20 seniors. I'm like, all right, Coach Ray, they're seniors now. But you talk about his team still being young when you're talking about a kid that's a sophomore tailback. Obviously, he did all this as a freshman last year. So is this team really still got some growth in it from that standpoint?
I think,
which is scary.
I think the team to watch is not this team, but the next one. There's some offensive linemen that are young in this position group. They return as starters, but those were sophomores a year ago, going to be juniors, fixing to turn, obviously, seniors in a couple of seasons. And so, I think it is a team that, Bruce, maybe there's some growth. They're not a finished product by any means. They're, yes, they made it to the South State Championship. Yes, they had an opportunity to win that football game, but at the end of the day, Yeah, they felt like, they were ahead of schedule. And so, their starting quarterback a year ago had never taken a snap of varsity football prior to game one and then just slowly developed. So I think there's still room for Sidney Blackman to grow as a quarterback. They do introduce a new 3-back, which is the blocking back, which is a integral part of this single wing system. He's a guy that maybe carries it 2 times a night, but is your lead blocker on almost all of your plays. And so if you want to get to the football, you find him. And so for guys like him that they're going to introduce that as a new position, they're by far not a finished product or a polished product, but they're an awfully talented one.
Yeah, and Caden, I'm if I'm totally wrong here, just tell me. But my guess is former offensive lineman. Or were you a starting tailback? What was your position in high school?
I was offensive lineman.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Because you mentioned Coach Feaster. I was like, he said Feaster, and he bench pressed 500, and he was your offensive line coach. Okay. And so you know it as well as anybody what Jason is talking about here. A sophomore or even a junior at times versus an 18-year-old senior. Football, that's a big gap. And, maybe a freshman running back can be fast enough to outrun those older guys, but if you're a lineman, there ain't no outrunning it. You better have the strength to stand up. And Jason's talking about a young offensive line. They're just going to physically get bigger, faster, stronger, and be more of an impact on the game.
With their size, Jay Beach was our offensive line coach.
Okay.
And pad level. So with these younger guys, I mean, if you're getting good pad level preached and you're getting, it's a wing, it's a single back, so you've got motions, your guards. Yeah. I was a pulling guard in the wing tee, and I know they're teaching you steps. Your pad level has to be right, head placement, all those things will be taught right. And while they may be a little small, that's the beauty of a misdirection offense. Sure. It's 4 lines that don't have the guys that can kick back and run a spread. Right. You use your misdirection, you use your pull-in, because you have smaller guys that are going to be faster. You've got tackles that are going up to the second level and hitting linebackers, and linemen coming out and making plays on DBs, and that's what you'll see a lot. And PRC will have some with their system this year. It's kind of a gun wing style offense, the one that's been running Stone County, and a lot of misdirection. But Jay Beach does the same thing as well, And when he was in the transition at Pearl River Central before that, I think it was 2011, whenever we got Eric Collins, we thought JB was going to be our head coach. I mean, we just knew as players. And, it went a different route, but happy it did because, the Feaster, Seth Smith, Quincy Patrick up there in West Harrison, who that was my guy when I played. All these other guys got opportunities and kept continuing to grow, which has ultimately become the South down here. I mean, is all those guys have worked together. I mean, that alone is amazing.
That's why we see all these same offenses.
That's
everywhere.
what it
They're all
is.
from the same tree.
They all came from the same exact
everybody's
program.
Running the same thing. And they're all running it really well. But Jason, that was what Kate said is, okay, obviously as young linemen, their technique was really special because they were able to do it, and now they're just going to get bigger and stronger, and with the right technique, they're just going to be that much more effective. And so Keys is, 1,800 yards, 2,000 yards, something like that. If he stays healthy, doesn't sound like it's out of the realm of possibility.
No, he went for 1,300 in essentially half a regular season and a playoff run. And, the sky's the limit for him. And, also one other key factor, the Hornets, they had a first-year defensive coordinator as well, and Chris DeWeese, who actually left in the middle of the summer when Jacob Aycock became the head coach at Stone County, left the offensive side to go defensive. So he's a guy who was kind of learning his way through and calling defenses and such for the Poplarville Hornets. I look for that to be a unit that showed a lot of growth. They got better throughout the year. And look, literally they were defeated on a smash route play to the back corner of the end zone that, frankly, you couldn't have run a football and placed it any better than where the young man from Columbia threw that football. And so his team and his defense feels like they were literally one play away from putting their program in another state championship appearance, and I look for that to be a unit that grows as well.
Yeah, and when you look at the schedule, you open up with Jeff Davis County, which is the consolidated school that has become very successful.
Yes.
With Bassfield and the other schools in that area. So a test early on is that road trip up there. And then you get Stone at home, and then Newton County at home.
Yep,
and then,
that's correct.
You guys, what is that? September 20th, Pearl River Central, Poplarville. So a little county rivalry game there. be a few people there at that one.
There will be, yeah. That'll be
full.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. You know, John Feaster obviously has been at rival schools at Pro River Central, then Stone, and then, of course, a year ago spent at Moss Point, who was in our district. So that's a familiar face across that field.
No doubt. And then you get to make a trip. We were talking about how hard it is to win up in West Jones. I'm like, oh, y'all get to go up there.
Yeah, we do.
So,
we get to go partake in the party.
So y'all get to join in what everybody else already knows. That's a
we were
hard
talking
place
about
to
the
play.
support earlier, and I actually traveled to Soso last year to watch the Picayune game, and you know, we got to play West Jones and seeing. I realized it was something special when their quarterback, I believe, was a true freshman. Young man was standing on the left hash mark. They ran an out route with their far X receiver, and he threw it all the way across. It's like the hardest pass to throw, and this kid did it as a freshman, and he was just so even kill already. So I think they're going to be successful for a very long time.
Yeah, and so you know, that's a big test, and you want to test yourself at that point. I mean, you come off a big rivalry. County rival with Pearl River, and then you go up there and play in, I would put it as one of the top three, if not top five, not maybe top three toughest places to play in Mississippi.
It's like a movie.
Yeah, and then you jump in and you make a trip to Dantzler Stadium to open up district. So that's a big 2 weeks of games to take you in. You know, you obviously want to stay healthy, but big rivalry, big atmosphere, and then district. And so that's my coaching ideas are taking over now. I got to be real careful through that stretch. I mean, I got to have some plans. I got to have what I'm doing, you know, not speaking for Coach Beach, but just from me as a coach looking at it of, okay, I want to make sure I'm still got what I need to be ready to go to Moss Point.
Yeah, they've learned too, right? Over the course of this stretch of success, they're not afraid to be tested and to be whooped, frankly. West Jones a year ago put as soundly of a beating on Poplarville football as we've seen in the J Beach era. That will be brought up, I assure you, that week. We just didn't play our brand of football, and 98% of that had to do with the West Jones defense, who went on to be prolific, by the way. And so we found that out firsthand. But they embrace these challenges, Bruce. They'll understand the task at hand and be up for it. Poplarville, you know, has created this incredible home environment. Yeah. But what I find, what's really been successful in the J Beach area is their ability to go on the road and get wins and play well. They'll look to play well against West Jones. They'll be ready to win that ball game in Dantzler Stadium down in Moss Point.
Will be a little bit of an unknown with the new coaching staff and everything, and the change and turnover that's there. I can tell you this: they're going to have some athletes on the field. Yep. That's one thing they've always had. It's just Moss Point struggled. I mean, let's be honest. They're not the program that Jerry Alexander had, but there are a lot of outlying factors to that. But district-wise, division-wise, this is the hardest one for me to always get a grasp on, because I mentioned this when we started the show in the first segment. 7A, okay, I can give you two of the playoff teams, and I can tell you kind of how they're going to battle out after that. 6A, same thing. The other district, 6A, is kind of predictable. And then I get down to this one, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put Poplarville at the top just out of recognition and knowing what they've got coming back. And then after that, I'm like, I have no idea. I mean, we played Greene County. You know, we don't see a lot of Pass and Bay, but this district, you guys kind of separate yourselves in a typical last couple of years or whatever, coming in and I guess replacing Stone last year. Yep. And then everything else is just a mess. It gets into tiebreakers. It gets into point differentials. I mean, it is so evenly matched and crazy, you know, and I'm like, Greene County, I guarantee you, when they come to you guys that last Thursday night of the season, there may not be anything on the line. There may be something on the line for both teams, but y'all may have a spot clinched. But they'll probably be fighting for something where, well, if we win, we could finish second. If we lose by a touchdown or more, we're out of it completely. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility in this division. It's crazy.
And that's what happened a year ago. We were there on the final Friday night of the season. It was on the Friday night that year due to weather. Okay. Well, we play on Thursdays this year, but last year I think weather pushed it to Friday. We had the District 1, had it clinched. We had it clinched for 2 consecutive weeks to that point. We show up. They're a win and get in situation. And that's what happened. They beat us in the last game of the regular season, which has not happened. I would tell you, and I'll put these words on Jay Beach. It was one of the worst losses of his tenure at Poplarville, and he owned it. He said, look, I don't think I had this team ready to play, and that's what makes this district kind of funky. Past Christian was extremely heavy in senior leadership a year ago, so they're going to be a new face.
Right.
Bay High was very competitive all throughout the district a year ago.
And then Moss Point will go 0-6, and they'll figure out a way to win 1 or 2 games,
doubt.
and they'll
sneak in.
they'll wind up being
Yeah.
like a 3 seed or something, and then go win a playoff game.
I know Poplarville has dominated that district in the past, but what's really happened is it's been very competitive if you were to take Poplarville, remove it, and look at the rest of those teams. It's a bloodbath at that point.
And there's so much because you got Pass and Bay right there together. And then after that, you got to get over to Moss Point. You got to get all the way up to Greene County. I mean, you guys are at least in the middle where you can kind of go different directions. And Greene County is just a place for us. It's easy, but for everybody else, it's
tough,
really hard to get there.
It is,
and it's a tough place to play. Johnny Ainsworth Field on a Friday night. I mean, you're gonna walk into a stands that are packed. You're gonna walk into 5 or 10 deep around the track on the track or whatever, and it can really be a tough atmosphere to play in when Greene County's rolling, and they're going to have some talent.
They are. Kobe's pretty good now.
Yeah, they got Mike, Coach King's son, is a senior, I think, this year. They got a wide receiver that's maybe a junior this year. Matthew's kid that's about 6'4", 6'5", and he was a handful last year. And so but again, Bay and Pass, you're like, okay. I really don't, I don't know what to predict from them each year because you mentioned Pass losing, so many guys, and they're those teams that try to have established an identity, and I don't know what that is. Really.
Right.
But they can be dangerous. I know going down to Pass and Bay is not an easy place. I mean, when I've been down there for other sports, it's a tough place to play.
Yeah, it is, and sometimes the fear of the unknown of not knowing can be a little frightful as well for programs, and that's why you just got to take them one at a time, and just understand. Typically, Poplarville is going to get that best opponent shot as well, so they know that.
And so, that's because, like I said, when I try to predict, when Justin and I are talking during our shows and we're kind of predicting division, I'm like, all right, Poplarville is probably going to be the top team, and after that, who knows?
Sure.
I'll be a Greene County homer and say they're going to finish second, because it's kind of like with Picayune. I hope Greene County wins every week but one. The second week of the season, they need to lose battle for the belt and move for the Rebels. But after that, hey, I hope they do well. I want to see Coach King. He's a former player of mine, former George County Rebel baseball player, and great guy. And I know his family. His wife played for me softball. So, but that could be an interesting game at the end of the year because I know they're going to have some athletes. They had some skilled young players last year. And that's going to make them dangerous, and with a returning quarterback with a lot of experience. So Jason, man, wish you the best of luck.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it again. Caden, thanks for hanging around. The Picayune guys had to go. But, man, guys, I hope you have a great season. I'm just excited it's here. Jamborees?
Forest County Friday. We're not calling it. It's the only game I give my wife to sit next to in the stands, and the rest of it, I'll put a mic in front of my face and go to work.
Pearl River?
Yep, we got Purvis and East Central at PRCC Friday night.
Going to be paying attention to East Central because that's an opponent for the Rebels. Rebels got St. Martin Friday night. We're not covering that game either. I'm going to take one more Friday night off before we go to work on WRBE. But Talkin Ball Y'all, man, just pick the one you want to listen to. How does that work that night with Pearl River? Do you listen to Jason
channels.
On one half, and then you flip over, listen to Caden, and then
you get one phone and listen to one. You grab your wife's phone, listen to the other.
That's right.
That'll work.
All within one app, which is kind of unique. You can log into the app and pull up whichever broadcast fills your appetite.
There you go. Well, man, thank y'all so much for being here tonight. Thank y'all so much for what y'all do. Like I said in the first segment, man, we all just want to cover high school sports. We want to bring it to you guys. If you can't make it to the game, we want you to be able to listen. We want grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles from wherever they may be to listen on Friday nights. Tune in to Hornets or Maroon Tide or Blue Devils or Rebels. your team of choice, but tune in and listen to these guys. They do a great job, and I always enjoy talking to them. So that's going to wrap it up for episode 3 of the Southern Six Sports Podcast, brought to you by 228 Sports. Thanks so much to Paw Paw's Camper City for being a wonderful host. We have kept them beyond their regular business hours, so they're ready to turn off the lights and lock the doors and go home. And I'm going to make that long drive back to Lucedale. Next week, I do want to say we do have a special podcast coming up. We're going to do one from Keesler Federal, and we're going to talk Shuckers baseball next week. So tune into that, and we're also still going to do our regular football one because it's the first week of the football season. I got to do some high school football next week. So 2 podcasts next week. My wife's going to let me out of the house for both of them. But I do know we're going to talk to the Shuckers, and I'm hoping to talk to some more radio, internet broadcast teams and bring those guys to you as we get ready for the high school football season. But I hope you guys have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bruce Thornton and Southern Six Sports Podcast. We will see you next week.
You've been listening to the Southern Six Sports Podcast with Bruce Thornton. Stay in the game with 228sports.com. The Southern Six Sports Podcast is produced weekly by 228sports.com. All content and interviews are copyright of 228 Sports LLC. Contact us on the web for more information.